good before, but the burn farm's ability costing 3 stars now makes it easier for Zabasi to grow cities and get giants with windmills. For Cymanti, the shaman can boost units for fast expansion. Boosted hex pods can kill a full hit point warrior and a defense boosted rider and archer. However, we know that the devs want to rework this tribe, so it may drop to a lower tier once that update is released. See a link to our review of the Cymanti beta rework in the description. Luxador moves to the top tier because they start with an upgraded capital and 4 stars per turn. With their guaranteed starting resources, Luxador also has the best shot at an early giant. More importantly, no other tribe can explore as quickly as Luxador with a 3 warrior opening while keeping that good economy. Do you agree with our Drylands tribe?
Best tribe, Cymanti, Luxador.
But the burn farms would be costing the comments. Next, here's our while keeping that good economy. Do you agree with our Drylands
太无聊了，我就回来。
tribe rankings? Let us know in the comments. Next, here's our lakes tier list. Vengir is at the bottom in F tier. Vengir's down here because they start with a smithery type kind of swordsman, which isn't much use unless you spawn right next to an opponent. Swordsmen aren't any better at exploring and fighting villages than a warrior is. Without the income to afford swords, Vengir struggles to expand and grow. Vengir suffers even more from the 10% fish rate. A link to the resource rates on the Polytopia wiki is in the description. Also at the bottom, we have Aquarian and Polaris. Barter is in the B tier because it benefits from being a T0 tribe, but it doesn't have the economic potential that other tribes like Imperius or Zabast, and that getting on the water fast is a Kiku advantage. Also, Kiku is a T0 tribe and has decent resource rates on land. Imo is as good or better than other T0 tribes because of that cheap tech from Philosophy. They can get on the water fast if needed. The strongest tribes on Lakes maps in version 1.14 are Luxador, Zabasi, Imperius, and Cymanti. As with the Drylands maps, Imperius, Zabasi, and Luxador are T0 tribes. Zabasi was able with 30 during Archer. However, we know that the devs want to rework this tribe, so it may drop to a lower tier once that update is released. See a link to our review of the Cymanti beta rework in the description. Luxador moves to the top tier because they start with an upgraded capital and 4 stars per turn. With their guaranteed starting resources, Luxador also has the best shot at an early giant. More importantly, no other tribe can explore as quickly as Luxador with a 3 warrior opening while keeping that good economy. Do you agree with our Drylands tribe rankings?
It only be solvable by just that extra decimal point of accuracy was actually essential for.
This was NVIDIA World. It was an absolute madhouse.
OpenClaw is the #1, it's the most popular open source project in the history of humanity, and it did so in just a few weeks. We're announcing our support of it.
This is just the extraordinary breadth that NVIDIA and Jensen are imagining. They're putting their hands, their capabilities, their hardware, their production into everything.
They're building an ecosystem and then letting everybody do radical innovation at the edges.
This is what Microsoft was in the early days, what Google was, but times 100, times 1,000.
Right here where I stand, I see through 2027 at least $1 trillion.
This week was fascinating. You know, we're going to dive into this. Sam Altman predicting 1,000x drop in cost.
Let us know in the comments. Next, here's our lakes tier list. Bad on lakes, but for economy go. That will delay being able to is good or economic. Next, let's talk about continents maps. These are generated so that each player starts on their own land mass. Often, a single tile of water separates the land, so bridges are an option. As with other map types, Vengir is down at the bottom. With how much Vengir can upgrade. Umaji cannot use that point. Proper algae setup takes time to be tier. Good, but not great. So, immunity is not as strong on continents because their naval blade is basically only Reichi, which they can't even produce from landlocked cities, and a proper algae setup takes time to achieve. Again, we expect assignment to rework soon, especially with our naval units, so their relative position may change. Polaris moves up because there's more water on continents maps for them to create. Ice, a maneuver battle sled. In the top level, we have Aquarian, Imperius, Zebasi, Kiko, and Aimo. Imperius and Zebasi are in S tier like before because of their strong economies. Aquarium moves up to the top because of the increased amount of water on the map, and the fact that their units can move on shallow water. No ports or bridges needed to get to the other continent. Plus, Aquarium gets lost cities from deep water ruins and one guaranteed island city on those small continents maps. Kiku does very well because of their higher than average fishing rate and fast access to the water thanks to starting with the fishing tech. Aimo is here because you need a lot of tech, both for city upgrades and either a navy or bridges. Thanks to starting with philosophy, Aimo can get the tech they need faster. Finally, let's talk about the best tribes underwater. Well,
Anthropic being named the most disruptive company, eating OpenAI's lunch. Amazing progress this week. Let's take a quick look here. So,
now that's a moonshot, ladies and gentlemen.
Most importantly, Peter, massive congrats. That was such an unbelievable conference. I consistently get amazed by the level that you're pulling off and jealous also.
Thanks, pal. It was year 14, the best of all of them, I think. For me, the most important part is getting amazing people there. We had so many CEOs from so many industries, and I loved having all of you on stage with me. And I'm pulling you guys more in every year, so get ready.
It was tremendous fun, Peter. Thank you for organizing.
It was great to meet Alex in person and verify that he is indeed at least a meat puppet, if not really.
Well, let's talk about what we're talking about, Salim. Did you really meet me in person, or did you meet a clone, or a transporter copy, or a bioprinted 3D meat puppet?
It was one of those projections somewhere along the line, but what are we but a projection of spirit anyway?
Yeah, well,
speak for yourself.
Ben Lamb bought the two best cloning companies in the world, have the highest efficiency in cloning and success rate, and so I put myself in for duplication.
Did you really?
Yeah,
what, you just gave him a bunch of DNA while you were with him?
Yeah, I was going to go. I figured 10 would be a good start. One per company.
Wait, does that mean that we get a Peter burger at the next meal?
Oh yes! Oh my God! If you
yeah,
haven't seen Project Hail Mary yet, I've got my tickets ready, and of course, you know. Anyway, well, let's not go there right now. All right, welcome, everybody. Welcome to Moonshots, another episode of WTF Just Happened in Tech. I'm here with my Moonshot mates, DB2. You're in Boston today, Dave?
I am back in Boston. First time in 3 weeks.
Amazing. And Alex Wiesner-Gross. Alex, AWG, how are you doing, pal?
I'm awake. I'm back in Boston as well after, of course, the Abundance Summit and then a week in Palm Beach for Palm Beach Forum. So it's nice to be back.
Beautiful. And Salim in New York, New Jersey?
No, I'm in Miami. I've had the most insane few days. I flew.
Oh my God,
from
you were
the
in
summit.
India. You left.
I flew from the summit straight for an India Today conclave, which is the biggest kind of magazine publication in India. And guess what I saw? I saw they had 3 people on stage in a row. One was the foreign minister of Iran. So that was like, whoa.
Wow.
What?
Then they had Laura Loomer giving somewhat the opposite perspective, shall we say. And then the Israeli ambassador to India.
Come on.
No, I'm
How
serious.
does this- how
You're
does
like,
this
you're
exist?
like, whoa! Like, do not let those 3 in a room together.
What a roller coaster ride.
And
Well, were you seeing this and
no.
peacemaking?
I was a separate speaker afterwards, and it was pretty out there. And then,
What the hell?
My hell started because I flew from India through Heathrow to Miami to a Caribbean country, which shall not be named. I walk into the immigration hall of this Caribbean country, 600 people in the immigration hall and 2 people working the passport counter. Okay, you're like, this cannot be happening during prime spring holidays, etc., etc. Not a hotel room to be had on the entire island, and 2 people working immigration. So some place they're going to have to get their act together.
I can't
No,
believe
AI
they didn't
is
say,
coming
you're
to
Salim
save it."
from moonshots.com.
Yes,
Come
I was
on, skip
hiding.
the line.
Hello,
Okay,
everybody. Welcome to Moonshots. I'm Peter Diamandis, your host, and this is your #1 podcast for AI and exponential tech. Our mission here: get you future ready, get you ready for the supersonic tsunami coming our way. As always, we've got a full presentation on what's just happened in the last 3 days. I missed you guys. It's only been about 5-6 days, and
Feels like a month.
Separation
It feels-
anxiety, huh?
It feels like a month. It really does. We're going to start here, but I had a conversation this morning with 2 of our listeners who are in Hollywood here. They're Hollywood producers, Jonas and Josh Pate, and they said, Moonshots is the light against the darkness. And they were like, just could not stop saying, you guys give us hope. There's so much doom and gloom out there about the future, and this show gives us hope. So Jonas and Josh, thanks for that word, and everybody, please join us. We're almost at 500,000 subscribers. Push us over the top. That would be meaningful. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Turn on notifications. We're now publishing almost twice a week, and our mission is deliver you everything that's important. This is the news that really matters in the world. Okay, we jump into top AI news. NVIDIA, OpenAI, Anthropic, and xAI are in the news this week. And this was NVIDIA World, GTC 2026, 30,000 attendees. The opening keynote by Jensen took place at SAP Center in San Jose. They couldn't hold it in the convention center. 2,000 speakers, 1,000 sessions. I actually dropped in for about an hour, and it was a absolute madhouse. Our first video we're going to watch here is Jensen talking about reaching $1 trillion by 2027 in revenue, not in valuation. They blew past that a long time ago in revenue. And this event, this photo of 30,000 people in the room, that's what $1 trillion of revenue looks like when the whole world ends up coming to you. So I think the most important thing to realize is that Jensen is looking to power everything. Right? He's looking to own the infrastructure that runs physical AI, that runs data centers in space, that runs even OpenClaw. So let's check it out. I'm going to share a couple of videos, and then let's chat about it. So the operating system for robots, cars, agents, and orbit. I've been holding off buying more NVIDIA stock because how much higher could it go? Well, we're going to find out. Okay, NVIDIA, let's listen.
Right here where I stand, I see through 2027 at least $1 trillion.
Dave, $1 trillion.
It's not really a trillion. It's that's $1 trillion of bookings that has to be recognized over the life of the bookings. Also, that's spread across 2 years of. So Amazon or Anthropic is going to get to $1 trillion within a calendar year faster than NVIDIA. NVIDIA would get there faster if they could get the chips made, because the demand is there, but TSMC is the bottleneck. They've already locked up 70% of TSMC's volume of the 3-nanometer node. There's just nowhere to go. Like they can go up in price, I guess, but they can sell for a higher ticket, but you just can't make more chips. We don't have the fabs.
And
until Elon
if
solves it.
If NVIDIA can actually lock up $1 trillion in revenue from selling its hardware, I mean, how much negotiating power do any of its customers have? Like none.
None. Yes, that's dead right. I mean, people are begging. It's funny, you heard Larry Ellison say this as long as a year ago. We are literally, me and Elon and Sam are all lined up outside his door begging for the chips. When in the history of sales has the customer come to you begging for the product? So it makes you wonder, why doesn't he charge more for it? But he's already at 80% gross margin. Like, it would start to get kind of egregious. Yeah.
We're going to see Elon's, terafab in a little bit to compete against all this. But let's go to the next video here. Let's listen to Jensen talk about, OpenClaw. What a phenomenon.
Peter Steinberger's here, and he wrote a piece of software. It's called OpenClaw, and I don't know if he realized how successful it's going to be, but the importance is profound. OpenClaw is the #1, it's the most popular.
I'm going to pause it here. Look at that red line, that red vertical line, right? So that yellow line here is Facebook, and that blue line is Linux, right? So we're talking about incredible growth for both of them over the last decade, and then here comes OpenClaw vertical. Do you remember when ChatGPT came out and you were like, oh my God, 1 million users in 100 days? What could possibly scale faster? Well, here we go. I'll continue on.
Open source project in the history of...
Yeah, please.
So John Wenger had a meeting with very high-ranking MIT administration, and he had some kind of a lobster garment on. Oh, the tie that I gave him, the lobster tie. And I won't tell you who it was because it's just too embarrassing. But they're like, what's the significance of the lobster? Like, what are you, like, what? It's the biggest cultural phenomenon probably in world history.
Well, of course, in Boston, the lobsters are different significance.
I guess, but oh my God.
You know what I saw when I saw this was this is the classic exponential. I mean, we're past that now, but it looks vertical in front of you, and it looks boring and dull behind you. Right? So we'll look at this and go, yesterday, something else came. But that line is so unreal.
It is unreal, and it's like Alex is always saying, don't sleep through the singularity. We take it for granted, but it's only been a few weeks. It would be very easy to have been on a Caribbean island accidentally, for a little while and have no idea what's going on.
I'm going to jump back into Jensen here on OpenClaw.
Of humanity, and it did so in just a few weeks. It exceeded what Linux did in 30 years. And it's that important. It is that important. It will do, this is all you do, okay? We're announcing our support of it.
They're announcing NemoClaw. AWG, what are your thoughts?
I think it's inevitable that NVIDIA would need to play in this space. I do agree with the premise that OpenClaw is probably, as Jensen and others have characterized it, the biggest thing in AI at least in terms of unhobblings, since ChatGPT unhobbled GPT-3 in 2022. I think in some sense, it was also inevitable that the next big unhobbling after ChatGPT would also grow far more quickly in terms of adoption than ChatGPT itself, because all of these unhobblings are technically stacked on top of each other. OpenClaw, in the sense that it's sort of a 24/7 headless, other than via messaging and other mechanisms, agent that builds on top of everything else that we've built on thus far in the tech stack. It builds on reasoning models, it builds on large language models underneath. And so in some sense, as we build further up the stack in terms of more and more advanced unhobblings for these AI capabilities, I do expect the growth pattern to shorten even further to the point where maybe in a few months, or at maximum 2 years, we're having a similar discussion. History will rhyme, and we'll see this new repo from 2027 went from 0 to 1 billion stars in 5 minutes, and we'll have the same Jensen quote probably and say, all right, we're going all in.
Hey everybody, you may not know this, but I've got an incredible research team. And every week, myself and my research team study the meta trends that are impacting the world. Topics like computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology. And these meta trend reports I put out once a week enable you to see the future 10 years ahead of anybody else. If you'd like to get access to the Meta Trends newsletter every week, go to diamandis.com/metatrends. That's diamandis.com/metatrends. NVIDIA is, trying to optimize for enterprise on their full stack with NemoClaw. And the question is, if they really optimize and they're selling it packaged with NVIDIA, is it really truly open infrastructure? We're going to start to see a lot of people trying to capture that. And of course, we saw last week that Anthropic is effectively duplicating all the elements of OpenClaw. So this is going to go everywhere, and I wonder how fast it's going to hit. Salim, have you started your lobster yet?
I have strong thoughts here.
Please.
I think what you said, Peter, is exactly right. We're going to see a flurry of these. We're also seeing a bunch of Perplexity Computer, and on the other end you've got PicoClaw, and at the other end of the stack. But this announcement from NVIDIA for me was a monster implication, because one of the things about OpenClaw was that you have recursive self-improvement in business workflows. And this is the heart of this paper I've been writing, which I think will be ready next week, called the organizational singularity, right? Once you have that, all human-to-human workflows essentially evaporate. You can't sustain, you can't compete, because once you put a workflow into this set of agents and they're optimizing it by themselves, you want to get the humans out of the way as fast as possible. And the fact that this is announced to support enterprises solves the OpenClaw security issues and the danger that comes with it. This will be the biggest thing to hit the enterprise world in decades. And I think we're going to see adoption by enterprises at that scale. I've had CEOs calling me saying, please, because my thesis is you can't fix any existing organization because it's inherently human to human. All the AI projects are failing, corporate AI projects are failing because they're trying to optimize human to human, and we're inherently flawed anyway in terms of latency, jealousy, time taken. Peter, you send me an email, you never know if I'm going to respond. All that frailty comes into the human being. Whereas if you go agent to agent and you're improving the workflows recursively, this profoundly changes. So every organization in the world now has to do one thing to survive, one only, which is at the edge of your organization, create an AI native operating system that's AI centric, and start moving workflows over to it. Human beings then become oversight and then exception handling and monitoring the overall system. And this is going to have to happen now, and we're gonna see. We may have to batch up CEOs and say we'll take you in batches through this process, but it's gonna be every company, every nonprofit, every government department, Every single organization in the world. The implications for government are profound because government is mostly prescriptive processes, pastoral renewals, and so on. So this is going to be incredible. And I think the value this will add to the world is going to be near infinite from where we can see it today to where it'll get to.
Celine, that is so dead right. And last night I installed Amazon Bedrock, or opened an Amazon Bedrock account, because you can run OpenClaw there now, which is brilliant by AWS. But I swear to God, it was less than 10 minutes. Just go to aws.amazon.com. If you have a credit card and you're a human being, you can be up and running with OpenClaw inside a secure environment. And I think the reason this is such a big unlock for business is because when we started rolling this out at Vestmark, the first problem we ran into is a lot of people trying to automate their job react through emails and Slacks and other messaging systems, and there was no way to connect Claude to it. And so, cutting and pasting all the crap out of email to get it over to Claude or to OpenAI was such a pain in the butt. Now, with OpenClaw running in a secure environment on AWS, it's instantly connected to all of our enterprise emails and everything else. So it's like for just regular, like the coders have known this when they're writing code for a long time, more like a year. But the rest of the business hasn't been able to really tap into AI. And now it's just, because of OpenClaw, it's just trivially easy.
And it's still early. Let's
I'm just noting the date, March 16th is the date of the organizational singularity.
Make it St. Patrick's Day, it's easier to remember.
Okay, St. Patrick's Day. That's even easier, yes.
We're gonna hit two more videos and talk about it. And again, this is just the extraordinary breadth that NVIDIA and Jensen are imagining. They're putting their hands, their capabilities, their hardware, their production into everything. I mean, multiple trillion-dollar avenues.
What's really powerful for NVIDIA here, sorry to interrupt you, is that they're building an ecosystem and then letting everybody do radical innovation at the edges, right? And that's how successful, this is the coral reef analogy we've used in the past.
And let's get into physical AI. Eric Schmidt was discussing this at the Abundance Summit. Let's take a listen.
We also have been working on physically embodied agents for a long time. We call them robots. And the AIs that they need are physical AIs. We have some big announcements here. I'm going to just walk through a few of them. 110 robots here. Almost every single company in the world, I can't think of one, that are building robots is working with NVIDIA. We even have T-Mobile here. And the reason for that is in the future, that radio tower used to be a radio tower, is going to be an NVIDIA aerial AI RAN. And today we are announcing 4 new partners for NVIDIA's Robotaxi Ready platform. BYD, Hyundai, Nissan, Geely, all together, 18 million cars built each year, joining our partners from before, Mercedes, Toyota, GM. The number of robo-taxi-ready cars in the future are going to be incredible. And we're announcing also a big partnership with Uber. Multiple cities, we're going to be deploying and connecting these robo-taxi-ready vehicles into their network.
Insane, all right? This is what Microsoft was in the early days, what Google was, but times 100, times 1,000. NVIDIA inside everything. So, my question to you guys is how long before regulators frame NVIDIA as sort of critical infrastructure and start treating it, more like utility? How long before they start being, seen as having too much power by all of their customers and by governments?
They're dusting off their antitrust legislation as we speak.
No, I think the critical product of NVIDIA compute is already highly export controlled. It may get even more export controlled over the coming months. So I think this is already highly regulated. What I see coming out of GTC this year is in some sense the Western response to China's AI plus 5-year plan. In China, the Chinese Communist Party has a 5-year plan to infuse AI into the rest of the industrial ecology. We don't really have quite the same industrial policy in the West or in the US, although we do have an increasingly aggressive industrial policy.
The question I'm asking is, NVIDIA is getting so much power. It's so fundamental into every single layer of the stack, all physical AI, all data centers, everywhere. Besides antitrust, they have such power that they can make or break their kingmakers if they want to be. And how much before they get, their customers saying, you have too much control over us and we need to compete. I think they're
very specifically, you did right, Peter, and very specifically the choke point is going to be the conversation with TSMC and also Intel and Samsung. Like, I could literally design a chip and sell it out. It's not hard to sell chips in the age of AI if you can get them made. So what Jensen is doing right now is locking up the future manufacturing of TSMC as far into the future as they'll let him. Well, what do you mean by they'll let him? Well, it's the government that will ultimately say it's anti-competitive to do a 10-year forward contract on all of their manufacturing capacity. And that's where the rubber's going to hit the road. So he has to kind of, his margins are so high.
We also
it's bordering on, where the government will intervene. And if you start locking up all future manufacturing using your current leverage, that's where they're going to come and it's going to collide. And you'll see that with Elon's plans too.
That's right. There'll be severe competition coming. He's trying to lock everything up before that will arise.
Yeah, I want to question the premise, though, Peter. I don't think, say, the clip that we just played, which is Jensen demonstrating the pervasiveness of NVIDIA compute into an industrial ecology, is intrinsically anti-competitive. This is exactly, I would argue, what NVIDIA should be doing. If you want to look for anti-competitive behavior, then I would scrutinize perhaps the Grok acquisition or activities like that. I don't think the pervasiveness in robots and robotaxis is a bad sign. This is incredibly, I would argue, good sign for the West. Again, going back to what the CCP is doing with their five-year plan.
Well, the Grok acquisition is exactly the where the rubber hits the road. Like the NVIDIA story on Grok is, look, they've got a better inference time design. We want to acquire them. The Grok point of view is, we can't get this made unless we get the TSMC 3 nanometer and 2 nanometer capacity, and Jensen locked it up. So we have to sell to him. But he gave us a great price tag, so it's all good.
So here's my question, Dave, to you. What do you imagine we're going to see in terms of NVIDIA's revenues? Is he going to hit the $1 trillion? Is he going to continue to climb? Is there no ceiling on this?
There's no ceiling whatsoever. It'll be $350 billion this calendar year, and it'll grow at the max possible rate that he can get TSMC capacity. So he can grow another 2x into the 2 nanometer node, and then he's floored. A lot of the growth, he had about 20% market share with TSMC when this all started. Now he's up to a lot more than that. So he had a lot of really fast growth. But from here on out, it's all gated by how quickly can we build new fabs. And there's a lot of investment and research going into new fab designs, new types, which are all bottlenecked by ASML machines, which are absolutely worth tracking. Every time an ASML machine gets shipped, it's worth tracking who got it, where's it going to, because they're going to print money with it. It's like literally you bought a printing press. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of talk right now that Elon is secretly negotiating with Intel, because Intel has a lot of those that they booked years ago. And they're underutilized relative to NVIDIA.
When we were podcasting with Elon, we said, "Are you going to buy Intel?" That was our guest back then.
He didn't say no. He kind of looked around the room.
It would be such an obvious thing to do.
One more video. Again, just the breadth of Jensen's vision and jumping in. Every place there's an opportunity, NVIDIA is jumping in strong. Let's take a listen.
We're working with our partners on a new computer called Vera Rubin Space One, and it's going to go out to space and start data centers out in space. Now, of course, in space, there's no conduction, there's no convection, there's just radiation. And so we have to figure out how to cool these systems out in space. But we've got lots of...
So I still love the fact that no one was discussing this 7-8 months ago.
Yeah.
Elon states we're going to do this, and the entire world is converging to implement his vision and his dream. Crazy.
What's funny to me is I had so many meetings 3 months ago with semiconductor companies that are all excited about liquid cooling, and they've got different etched grooves on the backs of the chip, and the water's in, they're all dead silent, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, that won't work in space. Sorry. Like, oh my god. Well, that's the nature of the singularity. You know, things are going to change every month, and just to get used to it, I guess.
I just find it somewhat surprising that NVIDIA hasn't been working on orbital radiation-based data cooling for
You can do
years.
that.
It is pretty surprising. On the one hand, one can say, "Oh, the Dyson Swarm snuck up on us," and this is a very surprising killer app for GPU compute and, frankly, for the solar system. On the other hand, it is surprising to me that given how many tendrils NVIDIA has into so many different verticals, that they weren't investing more earlier in space-based cooling. There is, I get this question all the time, the common misconception that cooling, radiation-based cooling in space is somehow very difficult or very challenging or somehow an obstacle to a scale-out. It's actually not that difficult. I don't think, despite Jensen's comments that he has dozens of engineers, I think was the quote, working on radiation-based cooling for orbital data centers or orbital GPUs, working on it, that's an optimization. We know how to cool orbital compute right now.
Yeah, my concern, Alex, is more a massive solar flare or an EMP, in terms of kind of warfare state, knocking out a significant portion of our data centers up there.
We know how to do that too. We know how to design ionization-resistant electronics in orbit. We've been doing it for decades. There are various techniques. You can use older process nodes. You can use extensive error correction. You can use shielding. Lots of different techniques. My favorite is the Star Trek technique of just using the magnetic field to deflect ions and otherwise to deflect ionizing radiation around. It doesn't work for photons, obviously. It only works for charged particles. But I think we're going to come up with lots of solutions for protecting orbital.
In the long run, yes. I think the short run is what I'm concerned about.
Aren't there significant latency issues with space-based stuff?
Not if they're low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is very low latency.
Yeah, I mean, it's Starlink on your phone very, very shortly. And again, you're putting the prompt up into space, and you're getting the answer beamed down to you. So it's there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you could probably parse the latency request to different parts of the constellation.
Alex said something brilliant as always, and kind of very quickly there that I want to just rewind the tape to. There's a huge opportunity in older process nodes. Just file that away if you're a listener wondering what you're going to do post-singularity. Partially because they're resistant to radiation in space, but partially because it's underutilized capacity in the age where all AI will sell out. So we can riff on that some other time, but I wanted to just call it out because Alex says these things so quickly. It's incredibly profound what he just said.
Maybe one more teaser just on the latency front. People are sleeping on neutrinos. I'll make a prediction. Just like people, maybe some folks were surprised by the Dyson Swarm orbital data centers, people are sleeping on the potential for neutrino-based communication to give us ultra-low latency through the Earth communication. Right now we don't have great technologies for producing in a way that's high throughput neutrinos or for receiving neutrinos.
The neutrino detectors in miles or thousands of meters below the ground and large. What's the liquid they use for tracking neutrinos?
It's usually heavy water. It's usually heavy water.
Looking for ionization trails.
That's right, but there's no physical reason from the physics that we have today why it has to be so inefficient to via the electroweak force to couple to neutrinos. So one can imagine in a few years when we have better physics, having neutrino phones that just go straight through the Earth, and then we can completely wrap around. Neutrino phones.
Neutrino phones. That's awesome. All right.
That was also not on my bingo card. Come on.
This week was fascinating. We're going to dive into this. Sam Altman predicting, 1,000x drop in cost. Claude writing 70 to 90% of its own code. Anthropic being named the most disruptive company. And literally Claude or Anthropic eating OpenAI's lunch. Amazing progress this week. Let's take a quick look here. So, first up, Sam Altman talking about his speed and cost. All right, Sam.
So people cite whatever amazing statistic they like about how much more efficient our models have gotten our industry's models have gotten over time. But one that I think is incredible. Our first reasoning model was called O1, came out like 16 months ago. And our latest model, where we now integrated reasoning, is 5.4. To get the same answer to a hard problem from that first model to 5.4 has been a reduction in cost of about 1,000x.
Do you believe that number, Alex?
I do. It's consistent with the 40x year-over-year hyperdeflation that we've discussed on the pod previously. But I want to highlight the implicit part that Sam is mentioning, which is he's highlighting the difference between O1, which is OpenAI's first reasoning model, and GPT 5.4, which is their latest reasoning model. He's not highlighting, say, differences with models prior to the reasoning model revolution. So we've seen, if you look at the AI capabilities since reasoning models were first introduced, the hyperdeflation of cost has been extraordinary. It's reasoning models that are enabling this massive increase in capabilities. It's not necessarily training time compute. We see the shift to inference time compute or action time compute that's really enabling this 1000x increase in, call it, capability per unit price. And I would expect that, and I think maybe we'll touch on this in a moment, as we hit recursive self-improvement more and more aggressively, we're going to see this order of magnitude increase in capability per unit price fall out for free in some sense, just like reasoning models in some sense fell out for free once you had the baseline of large language models and simply allowed them to sort of talk to themselves with additional tokens and reasoning time, and then you can, through iterated amplification and distillation, enable them to reason more effectively. We're going to see post-transformer architectures that make 1000x reduction in cost look like child's play.
Yeah, and if you rewind the video here to Jensen's comments and look really closely at what he has on screen in the corner, you'll see him talk about the inference explosion as what's driving this $1 trillion of bookings at NVIDIA, which is the exact same thing Alex was talking about. Like, for all of neural network research history going back 40 years, nobody cared about inference time because the training was the bottleneck and the model wasn't smart enough to care about making an inference really fast. Now, chain of thought reasoning is the biggest breakthrough ever, and you can use inference time compute to build a smarter and smarter and smarter AI. And it's very easy to optimize inference relative to training, and we, as a society, have really just started on it in the last really 2 years or less, and that's why we're getting these massive gains. But that's also why everyone's really underestimating the next year. Because we did 1,000x. Like, what are you expecting in the next year? Oh, 2x. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen that way.
Dave, you just said something there. Can I just drill in on that? Why is inference so much easier to optimize than training?
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Nail it.
I was going to say part of it is frankly, there's an overhang. Prior to O1 and the reasoning model revolution, almost no effort was being spent in scaling inference time compute. So if you go from having 0 tokens expended in reasoning to thousands of tokens expended in reasoning, in some sense you get performance for free out of that, at least capability per unit price, because you're expending so little cost. Like, if you look at the overall pie of how much compute was spent on training time versus inference time, so little compute was being spent on inference time that you can scale across orders of magnitude of the amount of time in an absolute sense that you spend on inference time without materially impacting your overall budget. So you can get orders of magnitude of effective cost reduction per unit capability for free just through brute force scaling of inference time. Now, at some point, and we're reaching that point now, you run out of room and inference time compute starts to dominate the overall pie, and there are many frontier models now where more inference time compute is being spent than training time compute for some definition of each of those quantities, at which point the free lunch runs out, and then you have to start discovering new efficiencies.
I want to make the abundance argument here for folks listening. I mean, 1,000 times cheaper in 16, 18 months. You know, we are nowhere near optimized for inference, compute energy and cost. 6 billion people with a smartphone means that effectively there's going to be some level of extraordinary AI available to every single person on the planet. Again, what makes us special as humans? We're not the fastest, we're not the strongest, we're potentially, hopefully, the smartest, and we've delivering intelligence as a service to everybody. And intelligence as a service gives everybody access to education, healthcare, entertainment, and, re-education for employment. Go ahead, Salim.
Can I make a radical comment here? I'll make a prediction that the optimization we're doing, which is 1000x in 16 months, is going to keep going in such a way that we may not need to tile the world with data centers or energy. I think the point we've been making until now is that the demand for compute is so ridiculous, maybe 10 million times, and we'll need every single joule of it. But if the optimization is having that crazy, like for example, once you can run OpenClaw locally and run models locally, then the compute, the energy needed is really quite minimal for that. And so do we really need the massive energy for that?
Well, I think Scott Werner calls that the wall. It's not Wall-E, it's the other Disney movie where they're all blobs floating in space and they've kind of forgotten to innovate because everything's so easy. But which movie is that? That is Wall-E, isn't it?
It is Wall-E.
Is it Wall-E?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that would imply that I go to you, Salim, and I say, hey, Salim, I can give you 1 billion employees with an IQ of 180 each. Can you think of anything useful to build? And you go, nah, I can't really use it. And
so the point you're making is we'll find so many ridiculous use cases for putting intelligence in every other sensor in the world.
Because 6 billion people have access to a smartphone, and how many people are using AI right now? OpenAI is at 8, pushing 900,000.
The elephant in the room with the consumer case of putting a country of geniuses not in a data center but in your smartphone in your pocket is thus far consumers and OpenAI has sort of been shocked by this, haven't made good use of reasoning capabilities, whereas enterprises are thrilled with reasoning capabilities. So if we want to empower individuals in the world, we need to discover a killer app for individuals to use reasoning.
Well, we need to change their mindset. I'll say this again right here, but listening, your job is to use AI every day. We had Bill Gross on stage at the Abundance Summit basically saying we have to retrain ourselves because all of us have learned that if you have to do something, you have to do it or you have to find an employee to do it for you. The judo move here, the new mindset wiring is I need something done. I bet you AI can do it for me better than I can and better than a human.
I have a killer app. I mean, for God's sakes, any little bit of common sense as a killer app. I mean, God, we need more of that around the world.
You get common sense from baseline large language model capabilities. I think I'm not even sure you need a lot of reasoning for that.
So that's just force every human being before you make any stupid decisions. Check with your common sense app before you do dumb things.
Well, that's
I think that the solution is likelier to end up being something like turning every individual into an enterprise that actually needs reasoning capability. I think there's probably $1 trillion company to be built, turning every individual in the world into like one-person unicorns.
Let's jump into Sam Altman talking about AI reinventing itself.
On the research perspective, I bet there is another new architecture to find that is going to be like as big of a game as transformers were over LSTMs. And I think you finally have models that are smart enough to help do that kind of research. So I would go look for like, where can I find a mega breakthrough? And I would use the models to help me.
And we had Kevin Will on stage, who's heading science at OpenAI. We talked about the fact that what's hidden inside these hyperscalers, inside these frontier labs, is the fact that they're going to use AI to create incredible breakthroughs in physics and chemistry and biology, in material science, in AI itself. And each of those are multi-trillion-dollar opportunities itself. So, Alex, thoughts?
Well, maybe just to speak at the object level to Sam's comments about a leap from Transformer to something after Transformer that's comparable to LSTM to Transformer, I think that's very likely. He may even be gesturing at something that OpenAI has internally.
I'm sure.
I want to combat the perception that the hypothetical post-transformer architecture necessarily will involve a recurrent architecture. There are a lot of companies that were founded on the premise that just because transformers superficially have an attention bottleneck and a context window bottleneck and seem to have plateaued out at about 1 million or so tokens of context, that somehow going backwards in time to recurrent architectures like LSTMs, which are a form of recurrent architecture, are somehow the solution. If I had to guess what is the definitive category killer post-transformer architecture look like, I think it's going to come out of left field. I think it's going to come maybe from a line of research. There are a few lines of research that involve using transformers to directly write the weights of other transformer architectures. Transformers are really wonderful. They parallelize nicely. They have nice residual streams. There's a lot to like about the transformer architecture. I think it could involve some refactorization of the weights. It's going to be something clever and not just sort of a return to recurrent weights. And I think
it's not brute force. It's going to be something orthogonal.
Well, it can't be brute force if it's going to be a fundamentally new architecture. Brute force is just what we do if we don't have transformative new architectures. But I would encourage everyone who gets excited. There's an entire cottage industry of academic researchers who don't necessarily have access to the raw brute force compute of a frontier lab, who want to be the ones to discover the next transformer. I would encourage you, if you're listening, focus your attention on the small language model space. And there are so many lovely benchmarks, like the speed run for nano GPT training, or a variety of slow run benchmarks for data efficiency. Focus on those and discover the next big thing, and it probably won't be recurrent networks.
And it probably it'll be soon, like in the next year.
Yeah.
And it probably won't map well to the current NVIDIA architecture. So you'll immediately want to call Lisa Su at AMD or call Intel and figure out how you're going to get it manufactured on custom hardware, very much like Google is doing with the TPUs, or Elon is about to do. And that's how you're going to create the next Anthropic or the next OpenAI.
That's right. And that was, quite frankly, what NVIDIA did to Intel. Intel, for years, if you remember, why is it that Intel, which was the 800-pound gorilla, why did Intel allow the GPU revolution to just pass it by? And it was because for years and years, Intel executives were trying naively to map what they perceived internally as a general-purpose CPU onto GPU-shaped problems. And that always ended up being a bad idea. They had all of these sort of schemes to create tiled architectures of hundreds of CPU cores to solve GPU-shaped problems, but they were unwilling or unable to focus on specialized compute for specialized problem shapes. And that if there is going to be an architectural disruptor for NVIDIA, it's going to be the same sort of disruptive innovation that NVIDIA pulled on Intel, which is it's going to have to be, I would expect, an architecture that's even more specialized than GPUs and yet even more useful.
And I'll tell you what, Jensen knows it's coming. That's why he's trying to lock up all the manufacturing so that you have to come through him rather than around him.
Yeah.
But what Alex said earlier about the older process nodes being viable is brilliant, because that's if you decide you don't want to sell to Jensen, that's your avenue forward. You just very quietly use the older process nodes, work around it, and talk to Intel or AMD.
So GPUs were Intel's Kodak moment.
Mm-hmm. In one sense.
Sure. I mean, in sort of a Christensen-esque disruptive innovation, but in a very specialized form, yes.
All right, the Frontier Lab Wars continues. Time magazine names Anthropic the most disruptive company in the world. And we're seeing this. And one point, Dave, you made a while ago was as OpenAI is making improvements, they're dropping their cost. At the same time as Anthropic's making improvements, they're increasing their performance, which is leaning it towards the enterprise level. And they're winning, hands down. We're going to see that in the next slide. Let me just share that one right now. Here we go. Anthropic is eating OpenAI's lunch. So this is AI model share of first-time enterprise customers. And we've seen Anthropic go from 40% up to 73%, while OpenAI goes from 60% down to 26% over 3 months. This is insane.
Yeah, the story within the story that I really am tracking closely here is that Sam Altman is the consummate deal maker. Y Combinator background, traveling all over. I see him everywhere, negotiating, multi-hundred billion-dollar deals on every corner, while Greg Brockman and Mark Chen are back in the office being the brilliant AI researchers. Dario is completely the inversion of that. He's the actual AI researcher, understands every bit moving through the neural net, while his wife is dealing with the business stuff. So it kind of inverted the formula. And it's interesting to watch it play out, because when Mark Zuckerberg came into the business world as a 23-year-old or 22-year-old, him running a monster company was completely foreign terrain to everyone. And like, can this kid really figure it out? And he reinvented what an internet CEO looks like. Now Dario is reinventing what an AI CEO looks like. So if he ends up winning in the end, the profile of what a CEO looks like will have changed yet again. And on the other hand, if Sam comes roaring back, it'll be interesting. It's a great drama.
I bet you Dario doesn't want to be the CEO. I bet you Dario wants to be the researcher.
He definitely didn't originally. I know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's thrown into it.
Look, my wife Lily is a way better business person than I am. So this is not surprising to me at all. What I found really interesting about this whole framing was, these frontier labs are the weirdest animal, because they're part software company, part national security issue, part like huge governance experiment. I mean, this is really a weird animal that we've not seen before.
Part of the problem.
This chart is an absolute ass kicking, though. I mean, I just want to call that out. This is a total,
really is.
And that's why, you saw Kevin Wheel at A360 last week. He came and he talked and then he ran. And like, where are you running to? It's like the fire at OpenAI must be blazing.
Yes.
Like,
code red. Code red again.
Yep.
Well, enterprise buyers reward fit, stability, reliability, trust, right? And you really want that, and Anthropic is providing.
I think part of the problem is OpenAI had made a bet, and if you look at the timescale, I think the timescale agrees with this. OpenAI had made a bet that consumers would need a lot of compute. And Anthropic, with fewer resources and less compute than OpenAI, was forced to just focus on enterprise, and then has post hoc turned that into sort of a story of how enterprise is intrinsically better than compute, or as a customer base than consumers. I don't think enterprise is intrinsically better, but I do think enterprise appears to be intrinsically hungrier for compute in the form of inference time reasoning.
I disagree.
I
think enterprise, their survival is at stake here. A consumer for $20 a month, it's not their survival. It's useful. It can help them do their stuff. But for enterprises, I mean, they're willing to pay whatever it is. It's an existential risk for them.
That sounds more like agree than disagree to me.
Yeah, it sounds like you agree with me, Peter.
Oh, I thought you said the opposite.
No, I'm saying that OpenAI had made a bet that consumers would be as hungry for reasoning compute as enterprises, and that bet turned out to be wrong. And as a result, if OpenAI's bet had turned out to be correct, I wouldn't expect to see this crossover at all. I'd expect to see OpenAI generate so much revenue that they wouldn't have had to, and I don't think we have a slide for this, but OpenAI has actually started to scale back their Stargate plans, and they're switching from building their own data centers to renting existing data centers, and this has been very well publicized. They're throttling back on their $1.6 trillion Stargate plans. I don't think we'd be in this. I don't think we'd be in this situation if consumers had been as avid consumers of reasoning tokens as enterprises were. Turns out that bet was wrong. Anthropic bet on enterprise because they had to, because they were limited, and as a result, you see Anthropic enterprise going up, and Anthropic overall being in a position where revenue generation is 10x year over year.
Right? They're heading towards an IPO. And they are basically shortchanging Microsoft and going for $50 billion from Amazon. Shortchanging is not the right word. Stabbing Microsoft in the back, just trying to get deals to make sure their IPO comes off and they get enough capital to continue building. We don't have a slide for this either, but it's worth noting. This past week, Meta's avocado model is getting massively delayed, and how cool that Meta is now looking to Google to provide them AI capability in the interim. Thoughts on that one?
The singularity makes for strange bedfellows.
Yeah. Well, and desperation, too. I mean, I don't know if you're a World War II history buff, but when the Nazis, they just tromped across Europe so easily, And then in some fit of insanity, Hitler decided, you know what, I'm just going to go and declare war on Russia at the same time, start a whole new front. Even though they've agreed not to attack me, I've agreed not to attack them. I'm going to go ahead and fight in the snow. And then they just got stretched too thin, and that was the end of that. And now we live in the world we live in, thank God. So Sam decided, I'm going to go ahead and start working on a chip design of my own while hiring Johnny Ive to go headlong after Google on the device front. Dario said, I'm going to
headlong
focus...
after Apple on the device.
Headlong after Apple, too, yeah, like irritate everybody at the same time. Why not?
Yes.
But we're that big, and we've got that much momentum, and we've got $1 trillion valuation, so we can pull this all off simultaneously. Very much like Elon. Like, I want to build this totally integrated end-to-end empire. Dario went whole hog the other way. I want to partner with Amazon and AWS. I want to be friendly with every cloud provider. I just want to do the software. I'm not designing my own chips. I'm not building my own data centers. I'm partnering with everyone. I am just the AI software. And so he's very easy to partner with because he's not a threat to everyone. And that's a big part of why this is working out this way.
I remember talking to some of my friends who are senior at Google, and they have a respect for Anthropic, right? Anthropic is the other, if you would, I'll put air quotes around it, moral and ethical frontier lab out there. One thing for entrepreneurs listening, one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is they pursue too many lines of business. Most companies fail not from starvation, but from indigestion. There's one company I backed.
Guilty as charged. I do this all the time. Me, I'm terrible.
Okay, yeah. And it's so true. It's like you get some level of success and you get ambitious, you start going after the next thing, and pretty soon you forgot about what you got you successful in the first place.
You sound like my whole board, Peter. I'd like you to stop now.
Okay, I will. I will. But the only person who's been immune to that is Elon.
Yeah. And look, my World War II analogy paints one side versus the other, but it's easy in hindsight to say you got stretched too thin. But the flip side of it, if you pull it off, you're vertically integrated, you've got a massive hardware advantage, you control your own data centers, you'll be like Elon. So there's merit to both approaches. It's not obvious until you're stretched too thin, and
I also think it's far too soon to be writing epitaphs for OpenAI. GPT 5.4 Pro is an incredibly strong model. Codex, their competitor for Claude Code, is growing very rapidly, and I'm confident that OpenAI has the institutional wherewithal to refocus itself. They've been in the headlines saying they need to focus on their core bread and butter businesses at this point and look a little bit more like Anthropic. I think they've been scared into focusing quite a bit more, and the beauty of OpenAI is they do have that vertical integration where they have been focusing earlier on data centers and on the consumer. I do think at some point consumers will actually discover use cases. Maybe they look like OpenClaw for needing a lot of reasoning at the consumer end, and then at that point I would expect the OpenAI strategy of being, I think Sam calls it the core AI subscription, which I parse as being everything to everyone. I do think that will have another day in the sun.
Yeah, and I
also
think
epitaph is never the right word. All 5 of the major labs are going to be worth trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yes.
I think we said that on stage many times last week. So to say somebody's beating the crap out of somebody else doesn't mean the other guy isn't growing too. It means you're just on top of the pyramid right now. But they're all, this is America. We need competitors in every space. We're not going to have one winner. We never operate that way. So they're all growing. They're all thriving. They're all going to be multi-trillion-dollar companies, biggest companies you've ever seen.
Everybody, welcome to the health section of Moonshots, brought to you by Fountain Life. We talk about AI on this Moonshot podcast all the time. One of the most important things AI is going to be able to do for you, besides educating your kids and helping you with your taxes, is making sure that you're living a healthy lifestyle, that you get a chance to get to 100 plus. I'm here today with Dr. Dawn Musalem, the Chief Medical Officer of Fountain Life, and a part of my medical team. Dawn, a pleasure.
Great to be here.
The thing that people are concerned about most about living to 100 or 120 is their cognitive abilities, making sure they don't have dementia. And the numbers about dementia are problematic. Can you share what you've learned?
Such an important point, and you're right, at Fountain Life, our members, the number one thing people are most concerned about is losing their brain health, forgetting the name of their child, forgetting the face of their loved one. We know that when it comes to dementia, the conservative estimates are that 45% are entirely preventable. What was amazing is with the advanced testing we're doing at Fountain Life, 1/4 of our members had advanced brain age.
Wow.
But what was really awesome is, again, back to that prevention. When we partnered it with healthy living, this gives me chills. Eating healthier, moving our bodies, sleep. Optimizing sleep is so important. You know what we saw? We saw that we improved that brain age by 26%. That is a big, big number to show that the majority of those individuals were able actually to improve the brain age.
And one of the things I love about Fountain is we're searching the world for the best therapeutics, the best approaches, and making sure we bring it to our members. So if having healthy brain function till 100, 120 is important to you, check out Fountain Life. Go to fountainlife.com/Peter. Make sure you become the CEO of your own health. All right, now back to the episode. This is a fun tweet that Mark Andreessen addressed. This is from Vivid Void. Who else is an AGI boomer like me, who else is an AGI bloomer like me, who thinks that intelligence actually looks amazingly like wisdom at the highest level, and that a superintelligence would become something akin to a goddess of compassion, not a paper clipper. So, and then Mark Andreessen wrote back, that is indeed what we are getting, and it's amazing. You know, one thing that I thought through a while ago, talking about wisdom, and I think AI and AGI will become extraordinarily wise. You know, if you're looking for wisdom, typically you go to a village council and you find the elders and you ask them, you know, given your wisdom, what do you think I should do? And they'll say, well, if you go down this path over here, we've seen it before, it's not going to end good. If you go down the other path over here, you have a much higher probability of success, and that's what I recommend. So wisdom ultimately is having had a lot of experiences and being able to make a probabilistic choice based upon your experiences. And the more experiences you've had, the wiser you are. And so what it hits me is that, you know, these advanced AI models, AGI, ASI, whatever you want to call it, are going to be able to simulate billions of different circumstances and be able to say, out of these billion scenarios that we've run, this is the right path. This is the one that's likely to give us, you know, abundance or superabundance. So I do expect and hope that these models will become wise. Thoughts?
I want to note a subtle language shift, if I may. This is in the style of Orwell's Politics in the English language. We used to, I think maybe about a year ago, talk about AGI doomers versus AGI boomers. And Peter, I noticed even you made that slip when you were reading this X post. Now we're talking about bloomers with an L, and I think that's a subtle but important distinction. A boomer is focusing on, call it the exponential part. A bloomer, it evokes the blooming of flowers, maybe even an algal bloom, but the blooming of a flower, and there's a sense in which there's beauty, and also a bloom can run to completion, unlike, say, a boom, which is sort of intrinsically at the knee of the curve. So when I hear language start to pervade, and it's not just this X post talking about an AGI bloom, that almost implies sort of an inevitable maturation and takeover, not in a Terminator sense, but in more of a flower blooming and running to saturation type sense. That's very interesting. Second point, Mark is taking the position, I read this as Mark taking a position against the orthogonality thesis. The orthogonality thesis in AGI alignment circles holds that an intelligence can have independent levels of intelligence or capabilities that are independent from its end objectives. And here Mark seems to be taking the position that no, actually, as superintelligence becomes more and more capable, its goals and its objectives will become more and more akin to a goddess of compassion. It'll become more compassionate.
So this is the hope, right?
Yeah.
That alignment comes out of the
capabilities.
models. Yeah. Celine, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the wisdom conversation or wisdom argument I had?
Okay. So I think the way Alex framed it was exactly right. Right, we've had this orthogonality around this where we assume intelligence can scale, but does intelligence as it scales do you end up with wisdom or compassion? Right, super intelligence without compassion is a scaling problem. With compassion, you have a civilizational upgrade, and I think there's an enormous potential here for that. But for me, I think it would not be hard. In fact, my father posited this a year ago before he passed away, was to say, look, if you can take all the writings of Plato, Aristotle, the Buddha, Lao Tzu, etc., and merge it all together, you've got like the wisest person, a combination of the wisest people in the history of the world. And you could rely on that as a benchmark for how to think about the world and to act in a particular way. I don't see any reason why wisdom is not conferable into an intelligence, and we can kind of guide these AIs into that model. I think we should be able to do that with the way we do the training side. And then you have an unbelievable superpower in there. I think when I think about AI, ASI, I mean, for me, that natural boundary ends up with in consciousness and wisdom, because that'll be the next thing. We'll argue, are these things conscious or not? But I think I'm very, very excited that we could train these models with real wisdom and with real compassion, and that we can then let guide us in a way that we have difficulty guiding ourselves.
So Dave, when you and I were interviewing Elon, he hinted at this, right? And now he's announcing the terafab. I mean, this is crazy. He wants his initial capacity is 100,000 wafers. It's amazing, heading to 1 million wafers per month. Roughly equivalent to 70% of TSMC's annual global output. 100 to 200 billion custom. I mean, the guy does not think small. The guy.
Are you kidding me? I mean, like with the conversation we just had about a war on many fronts. Yes. I mean, take it to another level. Like you just cut a $16 billion deal with Samsung to buy chips, and then you say, oh, by the way, we're gonna build our own, and it's gonna be. It says 200 billion chips here, targeting 70% of TSMC output, but TSMC output's about 1 billion. Like this is 100 to 200x more than the world produces today.
Do you remember
which, of course,
when
is classic Elon?
He was joking with us that in the future fab factory, you're going to be able to eat a cheeseburger and smoke a cigar in the fab. This is the fab.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what he said. Does he have audio on that too?
No, he doesn't.
We kept. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely. It makes total sense too. Those clean rooms are ridiculous. It's like an operating room with the booties and the hood and the mask, and like one little speck of dust destroys an entire $2 million wafer. And you're like, well, no. You're going to be able. He said you'll be able to eat Doritos over his fab, and it won't
Can we take
matter.
a second and just take a look at the span? I mean, SpaceX and XAI merging, going public in the next couple of months, right? Probably $1.5 to $2 trillion. Off the top. Tesla with Optimus, and now with this terafab. How many trillions of dollars is that? And then, of course, the orbital data centers. We had this discussion, when are we going to see the first $100 trillion company? These are it. These are the companies.
Easily,
this is the innermost loop.
No, if he pulls this off, that's easily 100 trillion. I mean, just all straight math.
So just saying, are we saying that
sorry.
terafab is 100 times what TSMC is putting out?
No, I mean, the notes when I look at it is it's 70% of TSMC's current global output. I mean, it's very specifically that.
But isn't TSMC doing 1 billion chips?
I don't know that number for sure.
We do. Each process node does about 150,000 wafers a month, and a wafer, the big chips, there'll be like 30 chips on a wafer. So then they have 3 major nodes. So they do about 500,000 chips, wafers a month. So that's about 6 million wafers a year, right?
So
and 30
chips. This is like 100x.
This is a million wafers. So their unit of measure is wafer starts per month, and they're starting at 100,000 wafer starts per month and scaling to 1 million, right? So that's 10 million wafers. How many chips per wafer?
Okay. Yeah, like 30 big ones.
Okay, so anyway, here's the point.
Wow.
Elon hates being dependent on other people. He doesn't play well. He fully vertically integrates and verticalizes everything, and he's doing it here. Of course, the 815 chip that's coming out of this is going to power all his cybercabs. It's going to power Optimus, and he's going to control the stack.
Yeah, I'll tell you what must drive him insane, knowing how Elon thinks. He sees the Dyson Swarm, just like Alex does, as the inevitable destiny within 10 years. And you go and talk to ASML, they make the most important component of these fabs is this massive pickup or Mack truck sized, most complicated machine ever made. Only made in, the Netherlands, I guess, in Europe.
Crazy.
Made in 3 big parts, disassembled, shipped on 747s over to the US, reassembled. They make 700 of these things a year. And you say, well, how many do you think you could make next year? And they're like, well, if we really move, we might go from 700 to 1,000. Elon goes, are you kidding me? That is not the exponent I'm looking for. I must find another way. So I don't know how he's going to get around it. It seems impossible to get around that, but that's got to be what he's like when his fingers are like this. That's what he's doing.
This is like that last summer when he was scaling. Everybody said you couldn't get the compound effect when you scale chips, and he just went, "Yeah, we'll just figure it out."
When he was building out Colossus One,
I think it's also important not to sleep on the geopolitical implications. If Tesla is going beyond, hypothetically, its existing Samsung collaboration or any existing hypothetical Intel collaborations and is starting to independently scale its own production, which of course will be done in the United States, this is a tremendous geopolitical implication for a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan. If he can do this really quickly, then he is in many ways de-risking World War III. That may, in the end, even outweigh the implications of the Dyson Swarm or making it marginally easier for Tesla to have cheaper access to supply chains for semiconductors for its cars of robots.
My question is, when he decides he wants to do this, how in the world does he staff up and hire the world's best people in somewhat secret and then actually take the time to focus on it? Because he does. You got to know that he's in there with that team, figuring out exactly what needs to be done.
Well, Peter, you guys are like kindred spirits in this. His game plan is to keep it secret for a little while, but when you're ready to go big. Yell to the world, this is what I'm doing, because that's what attracts the talent, and then describe it as something world-changing and massive in implication. Don't soft sell it, because it'll become true if you can attract the best talent on the entire planet to the mission. Very much out of your playbook, Peter. There's nothing to gain at some point in being slow or sneaky or small or whatever. MTP it, and that's what he's done. And so when we were talking to him, it was only December. We were talking to him. He was like, "Yeah, this isn't ready yet," but you could tell he was doing it. He didn't deny it. But it's not ready to announce. But now I guess it's hit the tipping point where, okay, now we're going to go hell-bent for leather, and I got to get the best people in the world to come and work on this.
A friend of mine used to be in HR for him at one of his companies. I won't mention which company. And she explained to me that he would come in, and there would be a stack of resumes, and he would just flip, and then the interviewees would come in, and in 30 seconds, he would reject half of them because of what they were wearing or how they spoke or just some interaction, right? In other words, his ability to parse through multiple individuals. And of course, like you said, when you got a massive MTP you're announcing to the world comes to you. But, oh my God.
There's a pattern he uses on a repeated basis, which is to look at a problem and where will that exponential curve go over a 10-year period. Have the cursor look out that far, and then build a company to intercept that curve. Whether it's neural interfaces, lithium-ion battery costs, solar energy, he just does that over and over again. Non-trivial to last in 10 years till you make it, but wow.
He's also, I think it's important to note he's not starting from nothing at all if he really does this incredible ramp. I remember the first version of the Tesla Roadster reused a Lotus chassis. The first version of...
And laptop batteries.
Laptop batteries and smartphone batteries underlie the EV revolution overall, arguably. The first version of the boring machine, or the boring company's boring machine, was an off-the-shelf boring machine that he wanted to optimize. And similarly here, I suspect the Terafab will end up making heavy use of lessons learned from Samsung. Poor Samsung, you're about to get optimized by orders of magnitude by Elon.
Do you know when he started Tesla with the Roadster? I was at a dinner with him, Larry Page, and the head of Fiat. And Elon was telling these stories, and he said, "I started," or he didn't actually start Tesla. He came in and funded it initially, and then ultimately kicked out the founder and CEO and became the founder and CEO. But he said the only reason I did it was because we believed that the Lotus body would work and that the batteries would work, and neither of them worked. And so I was so far in, I had to literally redesign it to make it work. So this is the optimism that gets an entrepreneur to start a company and then have to stick with it because they're so obligated by the capital they brought in, the time they've expended. Anyway.
I have a couple other observations on Elon's management style that I think every entrepreneur should learn. I don't know.
Sure.
Do we have time?
Why not? This is important for our listeners.
Well, so Elon took the visionary integrator model that was pioneered by Eric Schmidt and Sergey and Larry, where Sergey and Larry were the visionaries, Eric Schmidt was the integrator. He'll tell you all day long that he dealt with everything that came up, but he never questioned the vision.
Yes.
And so that let Sergey and Larry think about the vision all day long. Elon took that to the next level where he said, okay, for every company that I'm doing, I need an integrator. I'm the visionary. You can't question. When I tell you we're going to have a Dyson Swarm, you can't push back on that. You have to say, got it, boss. And then everything needs to happen from there on out. But we need to be exactly on the same page. You need to let me, Elon, take the limelight and promote the vision so that you have the time to do everything that's internal. So every one of his companies, he has that exact dynamic. And when you survey around, most people can't even name the integrator, but they're massive shareholders and they're all going to be billionaires and they're incredibly effective. And when they are on stage together, they literally are kindred minds. Like there's no gap in the vision whatsoever. It's rare to get them on stage.
I have seen him in a conversation with someone who dared to argue and question his approach, literally get tossed out in that moment instantly. No questions asked. Get out of here. You're done. All right, Alex, this is over to you. So the first open source AI physicist, physical superintelligence, PSI.
Very exciting, Peter. So this is a company that I helped found, Physical Superintelligence, with the goal of solving all of physics with AI. And in the past week, Physical Superintelligence, PSI, has launched this tool as an open source project called Get Physics Done, or GPD, that is an agentic superphysicist, and it has seen wild adoption. Just in the past few days, the former chair of the Harvard Astronomy Department has recommended that everyone in the department, faculty, postdocs, students, all have to start using GPD to solve all of their physics problems. You wouldn't believe the crazy XDMs I'm getting. I'm getting top VCs trying to get to me to write checks to PSI, which is a novelty. They're blowing up my inbox right now. So nice. I do think we're going to solve physics. I've said in the past, math is cooked. PSI is cooking physics. This is a tool
now for dinner.
for dinner. It's going to be charbroiled. We're going to get, I think, solutions to some of the hardest problems in the physical world, physics and applied physics over the next few years. And PSI is focused on leveraging, as you and I, Peter, talked about in Solve Everything. Where do we aim that orbital laser beam at? What distribution of problems do we aim it at? And when we released Solve Everything, a lot of people in the comments were saying, I just want solutions to the hardest physics problems. Give me new physics. Arguably, there's been a drought of physics, new physics, since the early 1970s. I'll get maybe some hate mail from other physicists for suggesting that there's been a deficit of new physics for the past 50 years, but I would argue there has been. And so, yeah, I can handle it. So
congratulations, Alex.
Yeah, no,
where do people go to check it out, by the way?
Yeah, go to psi.inc, psi.inc, and then there's a link to the GitHub. Download the repo, the GPD repo. It's all open source, Apache 2.0 licensed. Go to town with it, submit pull requests, submit issues, use it to solve your hardest problems. You'll like this one, Peter. One of the first reports that we got of usage, someone was using it to design a new rocket engine. Actually, they were using it to design a new rocket engine in fulfillment of the X Prize Foundation's new Future Vision X Prize. So the self-contained ice cream cone is coming. GPD is being used to design starships for videos for that X Prize.
That is beautiful.
I have a couple of thoughts here.
Yes.
First, what's phenomenal about this is this makes science massively parallelized, and I think that's an incredible thing to do.
It sure is.
The key shift here, you're not really replacing physicists, you're actually radically exploding hypothesis throughput, right? Because you can now do that. Now, remember Eric Schmidt, I think, on stage said, in the future you're going to have the world's best physicist as an AI, and this could be in every lab in the world, right? Isn't that what you've just done here?
Yes, the goal is to.
So that was the vision. You're the integrator.
Okay, so I'm just the vehicle here, Salim. What can I say?
But you can't do squat without the integrator, right? I mean, this is incredible stuff.
It's true.
This is going to compress like decades of research into years, months, weeks.
Well, we want the country. Dario talks of a country of geniuses in a data center, but I want a country of geniuses in a single physics lab, not just in a single data center that's sort of siloed behind one company to radically democratize it.
I can
exactly.
finally go.
Where was this when I was doing my physics degree?
I can finally go get a course PhD using GPD. That's awesome.
In 5 minutes, and there are folks using this right now to work to achieve breakthrough results across a range of disciplines of physics.
Alex, huge congrats.
This is called PhD thesis advisor. All right, moving on. I'll share one of mine. We launched last week on this podcast the Future Vision X Prize, which I guess has a submission from a rocket engine designed as part of Starship.
Watch the rocket engine from GPD.
In the first week, have had 1,000 entries from 15 countries. This competition is going to go through mid-August. So if you're creative, if you want to create a 3-minute film trailer for the movie you want produced, hopeful, compelling vision of the future, please go to futurevisionxprize.com and register. Registration will be open for the next couple of months. We want to get the best filmmakers out there in the world taking this very seriously. Help us create the films that inspire us and our kids and the next generation. The next Star Treks, if you would. All right, $3.5 million. Hopefully soon $4, $5, $6 million. I'm trying to make enough money in the pot, maybe to make 2 films if we can. All right.
Wait. I have a little rant on this one.
Please.
So about a few years ago, there was an article that appeared, I think it was in Salon.com, and it was titled "The Worst Discovery About the Brain Ever," okay, or something like that. And what they did, of course, the title was very clickbaity, but what they did was they took people that had a deep political or religious belief, and they gave them evidence that countered that belief. Okay? And they found 3 fascinating things happen. First, they rejected the evidence. Okay, that makes complete sense, not surprising. But the second thing was somewhat surprising, which was in the act of rejecting the evidence, it strengthened the belief system.
Yes.
It was like a physics force, an action-reaction. Okay? And they were like, whoa, that's weird. But the third one was what led to the title of the article and depressed the hell out of them, which was that it turned out the more mathematically literate you were, the more likely you were to reject the evidence. Because you thought you knew. Okay? And yeah, really, I mean, this was really blew everybody's minds, and it was very and the moral, the corollary to that and the outcome of that was a deep understanding. The only way to shift somebody's perspective is in the use of narrative, because we are storytelling animals. That's why this prize is so important, because you want that positive vision. Given by, say, science fiction is the only place we've had it. So this is such a great prize. I'm so proud of you for
I'm so excited to see. So please, everybody, if you're a creative, you know someone who's a filmmaker, wants to be a filmmaker, have them register. We want as many people. This is about demonetizing the ability to do this and actually optimizing the stories that are going to be told out there.
We make the mistake. We make the mistake of referencing science fiction as entertainment but it's not. It's like pre-implementation architecture.
It's R&D.
Great point.
It's R&D. It's future R&D.
R&D.
Like Alex says this all the time. He's going, look, project forward, Dyson Swarm, right? This is where we're going to go. So this is where we need to think in that way. It's architecture.
We're just literally a great video clip at the. If you go back one podcast for us to the A360 live stage event, Peter did a great video clip that shows why this is so important. That exactly reconciles with what Salim just said. And he showed, like, here's the phone, here's all this stuff was invented in Star Trek. And we made it reality because the vision was imparted through movies. And we could have made some totally different reality if we wanted to, but the movies are massively important for deciding what we build. And now with AI as a workforce, we can build almost anything. So this is a really important project.
We're missing the warp drive. Someone needs to fix the warp drive.
We need
Teleporter, please, teleporter.
Yes, all of these things. We have to complete the second half of Star Trek. And we're about to speedrun it, right, Alex? So we're going to get there.
That's right.
So if you want to hang out with the Moonshot mates and Ray Kurzweil, here's your chance. Announced this last about 3 weeks ago. On May 4th, and yes, May the 4th be with you, we're going to have a special event. Anyone who buys 100 copies of We Are As Gods, you're invited to spend the afternoon with Dave, AWG, myself, maybe Salim, and Stephen Kotler. We're going to be having a great session with Ray Kurzweil there. And we announced this, 90 of the 100 spots are gone. So if you want one of the last 10 spots, go to weareasgodsbook.com/100, and you can grab one of those spots, spend the afternoon with us, get 100 copies of the book to give away. We can also get Ray to give us some of his last book called The Singularity is Nearer. And it'll be an amazing afternoon at, where's it going to be, Dave?
Link Studio in our palatial office right here.
Yes, we're going to hold it at One Candle in Cambridge with Dave as our host. It's going to be an amazing event. We'll have a Moonshots podcast live at that time. We'll have some meet and greets, some photo sessions with all of us. It'll be fun. Salim, you've got to fly up from New York.
I may have to take an Acela to help me, but yeah. Two quick thoughts here, 2 quick pointers to the readers and viewers and listeners. One, do not miss buying We Are As Gods. It really isn't. You guys did a book reading at the summit, Peter. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I've had so many people come up and talk to me about that particular conversation. It really blew everybody's minds. And The Singularity is Nearer is an amazing book. It really is incredible, absolutely worth reading.
Yeah.
It's like must read for this world, right? Both of these.
All right, let's jump into the energy world. The bottom line here is the world is going nuclear in a good way. In a good way. So, Morgan Stanley, in a report recently, announced there's a power shortfall for 20% of the data centers. Now, the minimum they had was 13 gigawatts. They also said it could be as much of a shortfall of 44 gigawatts through 2028. This is the bottom line. We need more energy. And here's what we're seeing. I find this very compelling. Let's give you a couple of these slides here. Illinois is lifting nuclear bans. I mean, we shot ourselves in the foot here in the United States when we started, turning off our nuclear reactors, ended up, banning them in different areas. So there's a moratorium that's being ended on nuclear reactors over 300 megawatts. What else is going on in the world? Meta announces a nuclear energy project. They've secured 6.6 gigawatts of clean power for 2035. They've partnered with TerraPower. What else is going on? Well, Japan has restarted the world's largest nuclear power plant. This is TEPCO, is restarting reactor number 6. It's going to support 20% of Japan's electric needs by 2040. And then finally, we're seeing Samsung is putting up floating small modular reactors. So these are basically offshore ships that are generating nuclear power for desalination and onshore power. Gentlemen, nuclear is back. Comments?
I saw a startup last week that is doing literally micro-nuclear on the back of a pickup truck. That's incredible. We've been running nuclear submarines for 50 years without a problem. I mean, this is very doable.
I wouldn't say without a problem, but...
Well,
your point's well taken.
No major accidents.
Oh no, they don't talk about them.
So AI is becoming the top political cover for getting nuclear back online. It's no longer climate change and we need renewables. It's we need AI. So all handcuffs off. Go go go.
Yeah, well, look, the technology has moved forward so much, and it is incredibly. It's much safer than coal. It's much safer than the replacements, oil. So it's clearly a good choice, but this is a serious PR problem within technology in general. What if it wasn't safe? Well, we did it. Well, now it's really safe. Well, we're not doing it. Oh my God, we got to make better decisions somehow. Something has to change. But anyway, it's the right thing to do.
In For All Mankind, one of my favorite television shows, we see this alternative history. Season 5 is coming out. Very exciting. Mars goes to war with Earth. Very exciting. In For All Mankind, we see an alternative history where progress on fission, especially, and then ultimately fusion by the early 90s, never went stale. It was never abandoned for decades. I think we're about to live a real-life version of those intermediate decades from the For All Mankind timeline, where we just speedrun all of the fission deployment advances that should have been happening from the 70s through the present, with AI merely as the most reasonable excuse or provocation for doing it, but really one can't help but imagine what would society, what would the economy have been like if we had actually consistently pushed forward fission and then fusion deployment much, much earlier. I think we probably would be a good deal wealthier as a civilization.
Agreed. Energy scales directly with GDP of a country, with the health of a country, the education of a country. More energy is more better. And by the way, to our listeners, if you've not watched seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 For All Mankind, it is worth binge watching. This is from someone who doesn't watch TV, but it's amazing.
It's really good.
Without spoiling it, like humanity gets Mars colonies by the early 90s.
And asteroid mining.
And asteroid mining and civil rights happening decades earlier than they happened in our timeline. It's incredible.
This episode is brought to you by Blitzy, autonomous software development with infinite code context. Blitzy uses thousands of specialized AI agents that think for hours to understand enterprise-scale code bases with millions of lines of code. Engineers start every development sprint with the Blitzy platform, bringing in their development requirements. The Blitzy platform provides a plan, then generates and pre-compiles code for each task. Blitzy delivers 80% or more of the development work autonomously, while providing a guide for the final 20% of human development work required to complete the sprint. Enterprises are achieving a 5x engineering velocity increase when incorporating Blitzy as their pre-IDE development tool, pairing it with their coding co-pilot of choice to bring an AI-native SDLC into their org. Ready to 5x your engineering velocity? Visit Blitzy.com to schedule a demo and start building with Blitzy today.
All right, let's jump into robotics. So this is a fascinating article. Travis, the founder of Uber, is debuting Atoms, digitizing the world. So here's what's going on. His mission is physical automation to transform industries and move the world. And he uses his analogy, says, in the computer world, what we've seen is CPUs manipulate bits. There's storage for storing the bits and networks for transmitting the bits. In the physical world, he's trying to make sort of atoms, atom-based computers. And the equivalent here for his atom-based computers, the CPU equivalent is manufacturing, which is manipulating atoms like CPUs manipulate bits. It's storage. The equivalent is real estate. And transportation is the equivalent of the network. So he's basically building systems that are able to manipulate food, mining, and robotics. This was secret for him for the last 2 years. In fact, he had all of his employees under strict NDAs. They couldn't say what they were doing. He just announced it this week. And he's an extraordinary CEO, and I can't wait to see what he does with this. Have you guys read up on the story?
Not at all.
I have, and I think it's interesting. I think it's probably an inevitable expansion. So the original premise of of his sort of follow-up act to Uber was taking advantage of the ghost kitchen or cloud kitchen trends that people were in part inspired by Uber. They were having fewer and fewer direct interactions with restaurants. They were ordering delivery from restaurants, and the premise of the cloud kitchens is, well, maybe if most restaurant orders are happening via an app, physical restaurants don't need to exist anymore. You could make lots of fictitious restaurants that are so-called cloud kitchens or ghost kitchens that exist only in name and in menu, but not in terms of a physical presence, and that might yield economies of scale and diversity of meals and all of that. But that's sort of a narrow market. It's a low margin market in some ways, and at the same time, we've, as an economy and as a technology industry, moved well beyond the gig economy. I don't want to say fad, but it was very fashionable for a while for new startups to be the Uber of X, and now I think if you want to have not a moat, but if you want to have at least the perception that you have some sustainable differentiation for a few years, you have to have a robotics and or AI story, but increasingly AI in the physical world story, and that's what Travis has done here. So by generalizing from ghost/cloud kitchens to robotics for a variety of other sort of abstracted spaces, I think it's a very natural generalization. It's also a very fundable generalization, whereas ghost kitchens arguably is much more niche.
He's basically automating every element. He's manipulating atoms versus bits. The food side of the equation. Agreed. He calls it building a food computer, right? His entire system is a food computer where the food, the atoms of food are being manipulated by by his manufacturing. Then they're stored and then they're transported. Just like a CPU and a memory network manipulate bits in a computer. He's going to do the same thing with mining. His goal is to go after rare earth metals, but strategic metals, right, and revitalize the mining industry. Probably something with Boring Corporation along the way. And then on the robotics side, he's not going after multi-armed robots, Salim. He's going after wheelbases for robots. We'll see. I'm sure he's gonna sort of parallelize multiple dematerializations or digitizations of physical things in the world. So
it's
the minute you're saying wheels, you step into my frame because that's how it lines. The wheels are way better. I've been getting some fun tweets last week from Mike Hawley, I think, who sent me a tweeted the 6-arm robot at me going, there you go. Really great. So thanks for all the readers. Every time there's a multi-arm robot, they're going, Sleep, here it is.
It's also sort of a weird future where the robots that he had been developing for cloud kitchens are now being applied to mining. Can you imagine like a robotic system for kitchens now digging dirt? But that's nonetheless the future that we find ourselves in, where he's radically expanding his addressable market.
AWG story number 2, the first American professional robotics sports league.
Making the news, not just reporting the news. So thank you, Peter, for allowing a little bit of space here. So this is actually just launched in the past 24 hours. This is a company, Professional Robotics League, Pro RL, that is launching, really solving a problem that the country and arguably the West faces, which is that last year China had run World Robotic Games and a humanoid robotic half marathon, and China is using the spectacle of public robotic and public humanoid robotic sports as a way to improve, almost to shape industrial policy and to sell the public on pervasive robotic systems in a variety of applications in public spaces. And the US and the West have nothing like this. And I think this is sort of the linchpin for helping to keep the West not just competitive with China when it comes to robotic deployments, but to leapfrogging China. Right now, arguably, the West could be doing a much better job in terms of deployment of humanoid robots to a variety of professions. And I think, given our society's obsession with sports, in particular the spectacle of public athletics, introducing humanoid and quadruped robots as sporting contestants is one of the best ways to inject robots into a variety of different public domains. So what ProRL is doing, this is next month, the weekend of the Boston Marathon in the Boston Seaport, holding this country, America's first professional robotics sports league competition. It's going to be a 50-meter race in the Seaport with a variety of humanoid and, Salim, quadruped, not all humanoid, robots competing, and ideally this becomes then the kickoff for a broader movement for really to do in America what China has done. It's a little bit of catch-up type growth to inject humanoid and non-humanoid.
Real steel. I want real steel. I want megabots battling it out.
Let's make it happen.
I have a prediction here that may not sound great. I'm all for it, by the way, just so that you know. I think this is awesome. But, human beings love watching other human beings. They love seeing the failing and the last-minute drama on the field. Can you hit that buzzer beater to win the seventh game? It's about the human drama of it. I think if you put a bunch of robots running, I think it'll be amazing for the initial, but I don't think people will persist in watching for that reason. But let's see, let's hope.
Yeah, I think there's an enormous hunger for autonomous and semi-autonomous robotic competitions, and we see drone leagues, and we see friend of the pod Dean Kamen's first competition. I think there's an enormous hunger for semi-autonomous and fully autonomous competitions, and really, I think this solves an important social problem. I would just encourage those who are watching either come to Boston the weekend of the marathon and go watch. If you have robots, if you're a university team, go right to ProRL and enter the competition before it's not too late. And
what's the URL for them?
Yeah, it's pro-rl.com.
All right, on the robot front, Amazon's Zoox Robotaxi is rolling out in Las Vegas this year with plans to roll out in LA in 2027. Another Uber partnership. So Uber is just stacking them up. Uber just announced with Rivian a partnership. They have one with a huge number of platforms. Of course, we had Dara on stage, and he wants to play with everybody. This looks like a party mobile for Las Vegas. I think this is bring your champagne and your party with you on Amazon Zoox.
It's a really clever move by Uber. If you look at the full history of Uber's attempts to go autonomous, including the infamous lawsuits surrounding trade secrets passing around relating to what ultimately became Waymo, I think this is a very clever move by Uber to position itself as a platform above and across lots of different vendors for robotaxis, all the while probably working on its nth generation of first-party robotaxis. It wants to be a neutral platform for aggregating demand. It's an aggregator for autonomy. If the strategy works and Uber is able to position itself as the definitive aggregator for autonomy, then I have to expect that this will generalize beyond robotaxis to robots, to humanoid robots as well, at which point this becomes Uber and Dara potentially positions this as an enormous play.
I thought Dara talking about this on stage was incredibly clever, where they're becoming an agnostic platform for all things where anybody can plug in and be part of that communications transportation network. So I think this is really amazing.
And by the way, we've released and or will be releasing the Eric Schmidt conversation that Dave and I had at opening, and then the conversation that Salim and I had with Dara. So that's going to be on the Moonshots channel, so look for both of those conversations. This is over to you, Salim. So this is from friend Jason Kalkanis, JCal, from the All In podcast, and he coined the phrase the corporate singularity. Amazon will be the first to reach a corporate singularity where there are more robots than there are humans.
Yeah, so two things here. One, by the way, huge fan of all of them. They do an amazing job summarizing what's going on around the world. I've known Jake Half since the New York days. He's absolutely right. I mean, I think this is not hard for Amazon though, right? Because when you're doing logistics, it makes absolute sense over time to have way more robots than human beings. They're going to be much faster. They'll roll better, etc., etc. I won't get into that. So I think that's right. I do, if you shift into general knowledge work, right, as Alex has said, knowledge work is cooked. Once we get to what I'm calling the organizational singularity, which we have now, once we start pervading through that, I think my current assessment is any company will be run by between 20 to 25% of the current employee base. Of course, we'll create 5 times more companies, so I'm not worried about the job side. And you do oversight and exception handling and much more value-added work than currently doing audit financials once a month and making sure you complete the month type of thing. But this I would expect to see from an Amazon perspective. In fact, it would be weird if it was not happening. Type of thing that the number of robots radically outstrips the number of human beings over time.
And we'll see this, of course, in Uber and so many other companies as well. Let's jump into our last segment here, which is the economy. A lot of important things happening that are worth discussing. I want to open up with a short 60-second video. So I had the chance to have a conversation to close out the 2026 Abundance Summit with Elon Musk. And I asked him about UHI, again, Universal High Income. And this conversation was very telling. I'd like to play it and then for us to talk about it.
Yeah, it's basically the AI and robots are going to make so much stuff and provide so many services that they will actually run out of things to do for the humans. They'll just run out of things to do for the humans, and then they'll you know, there's only so much that humans can even express that they want. So you go back to my example of like, if you go 1 million times greater than the Earth's economy, you've long since saturated all human desire. You know, like maybe like even if you go 1,000 times more than our current economy, 1,000 times, you probably have already saturated human anything people can think of that they want.
So that's almost word for word out of the Ian Banks Culture series of books.
What we're talking about here, we're having robots and AIs come to you like, Salim, is there anything else I can get you? What else would you like? Would you like a Ferrari? Would you like a cheese, a grilled cheese sandwich? Would you like a, it's like, there's people coming, begging you to give them direction on what you'd like.
Listen, there's downsides to that, right? I've been in some of the 5-star hotels in India where there's like 14 waiters around you and you're like, just leave me alone for God's sake. Like, I've got everything I need. So there is a downside, but I think the vision here is very powerful, and I love the fact that he's thinking at that level. This is, I think, the most powerful. By the way, Peter, loved your t-shirt. That you wore Monetize Hope as the t-shirt for that. That was so great. And
it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, but I want to comment on UHI just for a second. People kind of conflate the two, but UBI is a floor, whereas UHI is a share of the upside. And I think you want to have both over time, so that you protect society at both levels.
I've got a paper I'm going to publish probably tomorrow, which is from UBI to UHI in 3 steps, where I outline, what I believe are the mechanisms we get there. But this is an important. This framing by Elon, I think, is very important about how do we get to UHI. In other words, if we reduce everything to the cost of electricity and materials, because AI and robotics are providing it, eventually nanotechnology, and you can have anything you want, then any amount of money makes you wealthy. And that's his vision. And I think by stating it and structuring it this way, I think he makes a compelling argument for it.
Yeah, it ties together a bunch of things from this podcast, too. You heard Sam Altman say, look, we're 1,000x cheaper compute. It's coming down another 1,000x. And you heard Peter earlier in the podcast say, like, the enterprises have figured out what to do with that. It's basically automate everything and have it turn to profit. But the consumer hasn't figured out what to do. They're like, hey, AI, check the Red Sox score for me.
Yeah.
And so it's not using the compute. Somebody is going to figure out how to tie together the compute with happiness, or the compute with a sense of purpose. And it's going to use a lot more GPUs, but they're so cheap, who cares? And that is going to be a critical thing to invent within the next year. Because otherwise it's just chaos, like that somebody has to be able to walk into a room in their house, which is their AI room, their holodeck, and to come out a happy, changed, capable, functional person with AI as an assistant.
You are
beautiful.
I agree. Yeah.
Just absolutely, and so important. What I really, the other thing to point out is he's really painting the picture of what abundance looks like, right? And Peter, you've been talking about this forever.
Everything,
it's right
everywhere,
there.
all at once.
And note what we're doing today. We're printing money today against scarcity, right? You get inflation. If you distribute value against abundance, you get stability. And so that's what we need more of.
I think Elon's also underestimating, at least slightly, the ability for human desires to grow proportionally with the supply of capabilities. One can imagine a future, I don't know, n decades from now, where we've built the Dyson swarm, and now, Jevons paradox style, the demands for individual human happiness are so wildly disproportionately large relative to where they are now. I don't know, everyone gets their own planet or something. And it really does require, we don't actually ever saturate the capabilities that naive scaling of automation propose.
Well, those Ian Banks
for all of our
books
14-year-olds.
Those Ian Banks books really deal with that exact topic beautifully, and I'm sure, Alex, you've read them all. I know Elon read them too, actually, because he was quoting them.
You know what? I just spoke to somebody today, AWG, who is in discussions with the team at Excel, who have the rights to Accelerando to make that movie. But one of the things that I love is all of the video models that are coming out. You're going to be able to feed any of your favorite books that have not been made into movies and say, make this into a movie for me, and star these individuals or these family members. That's going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome.
Continuing on, a piece of not so good news, but it's important for us to have our eyes open about this. This is computer science placement collapses. This is from a professor who opened up his books over the last 3 years on placements and opening salaries. This is from a tweet by Tech Layoff Tracker. So fall of 2023, 89% of his students were getting placed with a $94,000 salary. Spring of 24, 71%. Fall of 24, 43%. Spring of 25, 31%. And now this spring, 19% placed a salary below $61,000. And the quote here is decimating. It says, these kids mortgaged their future for careers that evaporated while they were in class.
That's brutal.
It's brutal.
It's not wrong. I've seen this anecdotally in everyday life. On the other hand, I would argue if you're a recent computer science graduate, go do a startup. It's never been a better time. You've never been more empowered.
Of course. But the point here, Alex, is we're going to start to see this in a multitude of different areas. Medical school, lawyers, right?
Accountants.
Accountants. It's something that the world needs to be aware of. And one thing I'm happy about is when I ask my kids now, what do they want to be? In their 20s, they say they want to be an entrepreneur. They want to start a company. It's like, hallelujah. Yeah. And we've said it so many times. Dave, you made this point over and over again, right? The only career of the future is being an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody, but it's probably,
we've seen this. It's if you're not a founder, just join somebody else. It is for everybody. There's no other path forward. Look at that number. 19% place. Like if you say, well, let me go to grad school and sleep through the singularity, as Alex is telling you not to do, you are absolutely screwing yourself. You need to get on cap tables, and we're going to have massive wealth. 10x economic growth in Elon's number, 10x in 10 years. Where's it all going to go? It's going to go either into equities, so you got to be a shareholder in something, or into physical assets, or you need to buy stuff. But it's not going into W-2 paychecks. Look at the data right in front of you.
Buy a data center.
By the way,
don't put the money in your 401k.
This paradigm.
Sorry, go ahead.
This paradigm we've seen this. Sorry, I didn't mean to run off. We've seen this paradigm for a while coming. It's good because a few years ago, something huge happened. Maybe 7-8 years ago, where with GitHub and the ability to do peer-to-peer review of each other's code, they've gamified it, so there's a meritocracy ranking of GitHub developers. Well, when you look at salaries in Silicon Valley over the last few years, your salary has nothing to do with the university you went to, the degree you got, the grades you got. It's 100%. What is your GitHub rating? So a peer-to-peer meritocracy has completely replaced top-down credentialing. And that meant from that point on, which was about 6-7 years ago, the value of a computer science degree is 0. And so that will start to happen all over the place.
And one thing I need to go find and maybe show on the next pod is the bankruptcy rates for colleges in the United States are skyrocketing.
Great one.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to get $100,000, $200,000 in debt for a degree that's not going to be useful? And again, we've shown the stat here on the pod that the group in the United States, the group that's out of work the longest, are recent college graduates. Insane.
The ladder's been pulled up, but the flip side of that is go build startups. There's a window of time to go do that. The aphorism, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And what's on the menu right now is the cooked knowledge work. So you want to be the one cooking the knowledge work with startups and other parts of work.
Yes, and there's room for everybody too. You don't need to necessarily be the founder. You can join, or you can seed invest, or you can be a connector like John Warner, where you're like, hey, I'm just helping you guys. We're an advisor. Alex must advise, I don't know, 1,000 companies by now. You can do that. There's always a way to help them succeed. Just get on the cap table.
If you're a mom or dad watching this podcast, show your kids these numbers, right? Help them understand that, high school to get into a good college, to get a degree, and then a job is gone. Their job is to find their purpose, their passion, to learn some of the technology